Hi everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to bring you my May monthly wrap-up. That took me a second to remember what month we're doing the wrap-up for. I have all of my stats in front of me, and we're going to be chatting about my favorite reads of May, what I've been doing in May, and my statistics for May. Okay, so if you've seen a wrap-up video from me before, you will know that I like to start off these wrap-up videos by telling you what I've been doing in May. So behind the reader, right? So me as a person in May was very stressful. I was able to go on like a tiny vacation, but it just meant that I was reading a lot before vacation and then a lot after vacation. And I felt like, I know that vacations are supposed to be really relaxing, but for me, for some reason, this vacation felt very stressful because I was reading beforehand. I had some events and like some meetings that I was doing actually when I was on vacation. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, I need to catch up. So it was good. It was fun. It was beautiful, but also like it wasn't as relaxing as I thought it would be. And so in the future, I do want to think a little bit more about how I can make these vacations more joyful, less stressful. I was in a couple of panels at the end of May, and a topic we've been talking about in panels that I've been asking people about is kind of about how you refill your creative well. And so a topic that came up, and I can't remember who said it, but was about joyful procrastination. Who did say that? I want to say Kayla Faye may have said that. And so the idea of joyful procrastination, I think, is something that I want to bring forward for the rest of June, but also like the rest of my life. I just feel like so much of the things that I'm like procrastinating from work don't ever feel joyful. They always feel really guilt-ridden, which means it's that cycle where like you keep procrastinating because you don't want to do work, but work is always looming over you. So I'm trying to think about how in my life I can do that better, or do that at all and then do it better. So that's something that has really been on my mind in the last couple of weeks, and that's kind of like my goal for June, to figure out little ways that I can do that. I have some ideas. If you were following along earlier in my goals for 2023, you'll know that one of my goals were these creative projects. And so the first 2 months were supposed to be for knitting, next 2 for crochet, then for I hadn't decided really the order of it, but then there's digital art, hand lettering that I want to get back into, there's watercolor, which I want to get back into, and clay earrings. So I'm really feeling in the mood for clay earrings. TikTok has been feeding me clay content for a while now, and so that's the thing I want to start off with in June. So I think I'm actually a little bit late though, because it's like January and February we're knitting, March and April we're crocheting, and then May was supposed to be something different, but it wasn't. So I'm a little bit like not going according to schedule, I guess. But it will be June, and I think August, because July I have a lot of things that are going on. So I don't know if it will end up staying 2 months. I might like switch depending on what's happening in my life. But anyway, that's kind of just some other updates on who I am, like behind the reader, that part of the series. I want to talk about the things that I've made in May. Hopefully in my June wrap-up, I can show you some of these clay earrings that I'm supposed to make. Seriously though, I've been sketching them out on vacation. That is something that I had a really fun time doing, sketching out design ideas. I bought the backings, I bought more clay, I bought tools. Like, I am ready to go. So hold me to it. In June's wrap-up, I want to show you something that I've made that isn't knitting pieces. But this is still May's wrap-up, so let's talk about some things that I knit. I finally finished the sweater. In my last wrap-up, you saw it without the whole top part, or the yoke. That's what they call it. But I finally finished the yoke and the collar, so I'm just showing. It's kind of difficult to show you. Where is the thing? So this is my first ever thing knit from the bottom up. It's my first ever sweater that was like, the sweater wasn't knit all in one piece, but it felt a little bit different than having a sweater where you do like the front panel, the back panel, the sleeves. That's all I had been really doing. So this was my first like in the round project really, and this is what it looks like. I think it looks pretty good for the amount of difficulty I had at the very beginning. I was gonna wear it, but it's way too hot for me to wear it while filming. But I had a lot of trouble with the beginning, as you know. I had trouble then doing the decreases because had never done it before, so I was not sure about the pattern. So this took me a solid like 2 months of kind of working. I didn't bring on vacation, but working on this project. I'm very, very pleased with how it turned out. This isn't for me, by the way. This is a gift. So I've loved it, and now I will let it go. But it was a labor of love, and I need a little break from it, to be honest. And also, I think it's peak irony that I finished like a project before summer for winter. It feels really sad to finish something and not immediately be able to wear it and show people. So timing isn't great for it. But anyway, very excited for it. I still need to weave the ends in still, but I'm procrastinating on that because that is literally my least favorite part of any project. But my current thing that I also started that I had to redo, I think 4 times as well, is this crochet project, which is inspired by a shirt that Taylor Swift was wearing in like one of the Midnight's promo videos, where I don't want to lose my stitch. Here it is. So I saw someone on TikTok who did this crochet thing. They did the specific chevron stitch, so I was like, I'm gonna do it. That's my toxic trait, seeing like hobbies and seeing projects on the internet and being like, I can do that. Like, I can do nail art. I can't do nail art. But I like, that's my toxic trait. And so this is it so far. This is the bottom, by the way, and I'm working on the top. It's supposed to be a shirt. So this is just the front panel of the shirt. Let's see, I'm like maybe, I don't even know. I am not very far on this project, but my goal is to finish it this summer so I can wear it. So just yesterday, I did like this section from the yellow to the white. So that's my goal, to try to do maybe like 10-ish rows basically a day so I can finish this. It's basically going to be a front panel and then I'm going to do a back panel, but it's a split back. It's supposed to be an open back. I'm not a fan of open backs. So what I might do actually is like have buttons between it. In the actual one, I think there's supposed to be one button and one tie. I'm not a fan of ties, mostly because I can't put it on myself then. I don't know how I'm going to put buttons on myself actually either. But I'm going to figure it out, and I think I might gonna do buttons. I haven't decided though yet because I'm not at that stage yet. I still have to do the entire front and then do 2 back panels, and then I'll have to figure out if I'm going to do buttons or if I'm not. It's not a sort of fully written pattern, basically. The person who made it was also like, they freehanded it, so they basically just, I've been using it for the chevron stitch and kind of like how they've straightened it out and then added rows in between. And then I'm looking at the actual first, the designer from, I think it's by Mother Denim. So it's kind of like a dupe thing, except I'm making it myself. And then for it's gonna go in at the sides, kind of like a sleeveless. It's gonna be a sleeveless top, so it's gonna go in at the sides around the armpits, and then also in the front a little bit. So I'm trying to use other crochet patterns to kind of figure out how to do that. I've never made a crocheted garment, so this is really optimistic to start off with, but I'm gonna do it. My goal is to finish by the end of June. We'll see. I also have some projects that I need to finish in June. I haven't started yet, but finish in June/July. So I don't know how it's gonna go, but anyway, my goal is to like do basically an hour-ish, maybe 2, honestly, 'cause that needs to be finished. But anyway, that's what I've made in May. Those are my plans for May. Sorry. That's what I finished in May. Those are my plans for June. And yeah, I would like to talk about books now. I feel like these beginning sections are getting quite long, but I really love being able to share other interests that I have. I also, speaking of other interests, I also bought Sims Cottage Living. I'm talking about this because I will tie it back to something, but only because I saw chickens and I was like, I would love to have Sim chickens. But this is one of my ideas for the joyful procrastination, is just like listening to music and playing Sims for an hour. Normally I try to like listen to audiobooks, but I can't when I'm playing Sims. And I think that's actually good because it will force me to not do something for reading. novel idea. So that's kind of like my process behind it. Now I will talk about books. First, I'm going to start off with the stats. I read 40 books in May. It was like I'm speechless, honestly, that did it. I had a lot of anthologies where I'd read like one story a day, basically. I also listened to a bunch of audiobooks because I was working on these projects. So that's kind of the thing. Also, panels. I had a ton of panels in May. I also have some panels in June. I will link the video for you below. But that's forced me to read a lot at a time. I think I'm reading 6 books at a time right now. So July is going to be a bit of a breather for me. I did bring the books so I can show you all the books that I read. I don't have all of them with me. I also don't have the strength to hold up 40 books, but I did remember to like bring them or some of them with me here because I often forget, and I put these books aside all month. These are the physical books that I read in May. They're very, very chunky, like a whole bunch of chunky books. But of all the books that I read in May, 58% of them featured queer characters as main characters, and 58% of them featured characters of color as main characters. I actually have the same exact reading stats for queer and BIPOC characters. And now I want to talk about some of the books that I've read and loved. I'm going to start off with YA contemporary reads. The first one is You Don't Have a Shot. This one was fantastic. It's like a queer rivals Bennett like Beckham soccer camp book. It is fantastic. I did a panel also with Raquel, and it was just so fun, but at the same time, the main character kind of added me so much. She made me be like, you are kind of like this, and the same character journey that is going through this book, you probably should take notes, okay? The next one is Going Bi-Coastal. This was so fun. It's like this dual timeline book, kind of feels a little bit like a multiverse. Basically, she has to decide if she's going to go for the summer with her mom or stay in New York City with her dad. And then poof, there's these 2 timelines that we're bouncing between in the book, and then there's not necessarily, it's not like one of those books where it's a mystery about these timelines. It's just seeing these different paths that could have happened. And that's, I think, what I love the most is that really tapping into this idea talks a little bit about the inevitability of some things and also the changes of certain decisions that you'll make. It talks about both of those, but it's also a book that really navigates the future in general. But I really loved this YA contemporary so much, and it was just like really, really fun for me, especially as someone who loves timeline messing around, multiverses, all of those types of things. Thirdly, I actually have a copy of it, so I'm going to hold it up for you now. I read and adored The Davenports. It is a very shiny book, so it's like difficult to show to you, but I read and adored The Davenports. This is a historical fiction book. It takes place around 2 sisters and then a sister's best friend and one of their servants. So it's a fantastic book that really talks about what we will sacrifice for our future, and it does not shy away from the different privileges that they will have based on their status and based on the class that they come from, based on the background, and it does feature Black main characters, as you can tell from the cover. So it is such a gorgeous book. I think what I really loved are these bonds of friendship and also family, but the main core kind of theme that these characters are struggling with are these expectations that our parents might have for us about the future and what we truly want to do. That is a huge theme in the Davenports. It is the beginning of a series, and I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. These characters are just so precious, and it was like a really good feel-good historical fiction while also talking about some of the racism, talking about some of the classism as well. So like it manages to balance these highs and lows as well. And the final one is The Queens of New York. This was so fabulous. It's like a multiple perspective story about friendship. It features these 3 main characters who are going through this really different times in their life. They're like splitting off for the summer into doing different things. One of them is going to like a pre-college program. The other person's going to a theater camp, and the other one is staying in New York City. So it's not only about the changes in their friendship, but it's also about what these different decisions mean for them and their future. Future is another huge concept in the Queens of New York. But what I also really loved is that it really delves into friendship, and it delves into long distance friendships, and it delves into the things that we can only share with our friends and the things we also hide from our friends. This kind of like dichotomy, this duality of friendship. That's what I loved about the Queens of New York. So those were all the YA contemporary reads that I loved. Next, I want to talk about, I'm looking at my notes by the way. Next, I want to talk about the YA fantasy books that I really enjoyed. First of all, I want to mention that I reread Little Thieves, and it holds up as fabulous as the first time I read it. I'm even more in love with Vanya than I thought I would ever be. I reread The Little Thieves in cooperation with Fierce Reads. I will link the post below that I did. I did a reread, and then I did a recap as well, where I did a Draw My Lifestyle video for part 2. I'm not an artist. And then I also read Painted Devils, which is a fabulous sequel. Not only is Vanya really also still questioning and navigating her sexuality, Vanya is also really kind of dealing with her own self-worth and her own self-value. There are just so many clever things that Margaret Owen did in Painted Thieves, and I cried. I cried so much. As an adopted person, Painted Devils, cut me to the core. These ideas of family, found family, family that leave us, family that we find, all of these different themes. Painted Devils, just it got me. I cried. It was a lot. The next one that I want to talk about is A Shadow Crown. This is the sequel to The Broken Blade, is a sequel to A Broken Blade. I really, really liked this one. I think that one of the things that I've seen from people are saying that there wasn't a lot going on in A Shadow Crown. There's a lot going on. It's just a sequel that is more character focused. I feel like oftentimes we have this idea that sequels will pick up from the action and keep on going. But I think also we have this idea because a lot of times we see trilogies, and that's often the framework of a trilogy. An opening book, lots of action and developments, and then a resolution book. But A Broken Blade, I think it's going to be more than that. I think it's going to be 4 books, I think. So I think that a lot of people, when they read it, you need to know a little bit about where the series is going to be going and kind of the longevity or the plot arc of the long one. And so A Shadow Crown has a lot of nitty-gritty character development. It asks a lot about trust and betrayal and making amends for our mistakes. It has a lot of really great thematic discussions and a lot of revelations at the end. So I thoroughly enjoyed A Shadow Crown. I was really not sure after A Broken Blade. I mean, I loved A Broken Blade, but I wasn't really sure where it was going to go, basically, in the sequel, and I'm fully invested now in the series. Now I want to talk about adult fiction releases that I really loved. The first one that I want to talk about is The Bone Shard War. This is the series finale to the Bone Shard Daughter series, and it gets all the stars in the world for me. It is such a fantastic resolution. Some of the themes and some of the characters are just so brilliantly and heart-wrenchingly wrapped up in the Bone Shard War. The Bone Shard Daughter series has some of the most inventive, unique magic systems I have seen, and I loved the ways that Andrea Stewart is able to kind of twist them, pull from them, evolve them, develop them in the Bone Shard War. I listened to an audiobook because the audiobook narrators are fantastic. Definitely recommend. But anyway, this ends probably one of my favorite series, period. It was just such a great epic fantasy saga feeling about power and leadership and doing the right thing. I think that those were really themes that come out a lot in the Bone Shard Emperor and the Bone Shard War. I'm just looking at the Bone Shard Emperor further down my pile. But in the Bone Shard War, they're just kind of brought to a close in such a beautiful way and a meaningful way as well. I won't spoil it, but it is a fantastic ending to a really, really gorgeous series. The next one that I want to talk about is Yellowface. No surprises here that Yellowface is one of my favorite books of 2023. It is sharp, it is clever, it is witty, it is cutting. It is a satire about the publishing industry, but it's also a satire about racism as well within the publishing industry, but also within our society I had read Disorientation right before I picked up Yellowface, and those books pair so beautifully together. I could not make a better pairing if I had tried. It is about thieving. Thieving. It's about theft. It's about betrayal. It's about friendship. It's about appropriation. I knew I was gonna love it, and then I loved it so much more than I ever thought. So yeah, if you thought that I would read Yellowface or an R.F. Kuang book and it not be here, you're wrong. Okay, the next one is The Battle Drum. This is the sequel to The Final Strife. So good. It did not go into the second book syndrome. There are so many like character developments and world developments that I need the third one right now. What Sarah has done with the world specifically, and the idea of history and obscurity and hiding history and changing history. Those were themes that we really saw in The Final Strife, but just really beautifully evolved in The Battle Drum in a way that I think is so meaningful. It's one of my favorite sort of themes that's developed in this series sequel, but also I really love the characters, predictably so. I cried when I read The Battle Drum. Like, there are some scenes that made tears from my face. So take that as you will. Next, I read two debuts that I am so in love with. The first is The Deep Sky, which is this, like, if the 100 was adult, basically just this idea that a bunch of adults are being, like, shipped off of Earth to planet X, and they're going to be the future of humanity, because basically our planet is gone. It's imploding, basically. That's the premise for The Deep Sky, and already I was going to love that because that's my vibe. But then as well, there's an explosion on their ship. And then it's like, what's happening? Is this a betrayal? Is this sabotage? What is it? And it also features a main character who is biracial. She is Japanese American. And I loved that representation so much in The Deep Sky. The ways that she is forced. And it's such a clever way that it's talked about, because she is having to figure out if she enters into this program as a representative of Japan or the US. Fraught, interesting conversations happening as well, but also these feelings about not fitting in, feelings of being stuck as well, are exacerbated by the fact that she is cast as an alt crew member. So she's basically someone who's supposed to, like, fill in, basically, if you're sick. And so all of these different things that are happening in her life, her complicated relationship with her mom and her family, like, that was such a beautiful element in The Deep Sky that felt so nuanced in a way that kind of impacted her character as a whole. Additionally, the space adventures, the crew dynamic, the space in general was just really, really fun to see and to read about. So definitely recommend The Deep Sky. And finally, the last book I want to talk about is The First Bright Thing. So this is like magical circuses meets time travel meets historical fiction meets queer story. Like, it just has a lot of different elements that work so beautifully together. I would not have predicted it because there are quite a lot of different elements, but they're so good. First of all, the historical fiction setting is on point and amazing. What I think I love the most about it is it happens shortly after World War I. And I think, you hear about all these conversations after World War I of people who are like, that was it. Right? That was the World War. There is nothing else going to happen. Like, that was the big thing. And then, of course, for us, we know that's not true. So I loved the way that J.R. Dawson is able to really lean into what that would mean. A, to figure out, like, to live through that, but also B, your vision of the future. And I loved that, like, juxtaposition between what they hope for the future and what we know about the future. Like, heartbreaking. Additionally, it has a lot of discussion about toxic relationships, emotionally abusive relationships, gaslighting. That representation was also fabulously heart-wrenching about the ways that, like, the emotional abuse kind of gets into your own head and becomes your own voice instead of their voice. Like, oh my God, it was so good, but so painful. And then thirdly, I love as well a good found family, and the circus found family and their magical abilities were just amazing. I loved listening to and figuring out what everyone's abilities were and how you can sort of see it as a curse and a blessing, like a curse and a power, basically. That is a huge theme in the first right thing. And it was just such a good book. There's fantastic Jewish representation as well, where one of the main characters, or I don't think, yeah, one of the main characters, she's really kind of grappling with like her Jewish identity because she's not really, she doesn't, can't talk to her mom about it, and these things that she knows would happen, and she's connecting with it and kind of looking at this relationship she has with a background that she doesn't really have any access to anymore, and no community as well to kind of talk about with at the moment. So I really, really enjoyed all of these books. Even though I read so many, I feel like my brain is literally on the floor right now. I had such a fun time with these reads specifically, and also a lot of other ones, which I really, really enjoyed. I will link all the reviews for these below. But anyway, a long video. These wrap-ups are very cathartic. They're really fun to film, and I end up talking forever. So I will let you all go. I hope you enjoyed this wrap-up. Please let me know, what creative thing you're going to try to do in June, but also, of course, what some of your favorite reads were for May.